Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is November 15th, and right now we're looking at the infrared/visible satellite imagery across the region. You can see the sun rising across Pacific Ocean as we speak. Cutoff low still spinning here across Pacific Ocean. Big ridge over the west coast of North America. Going to continue for the next few days. It's going to allow for some Arctic air to drop down the east slopes of the Rockies here. It will have some impacts on the Pacific Northwest weather. We'll take a look at those in some detail. We'll also take a look at the potential pattern change going on in through mid and later next week. There is some model discrepancy. We will take a look at that. Now, taking a look at things closer, some dense fog is around for eastern Washington, Oregon, some of the valleys through BC, Montana, Idaho, some of the southern sound as well, some of the southwest Oregon, Strait of Georgia, Strait of Juan de Fuca. But many areas have some nice, glorious sunshine this morning. So it is a nice day. Get out and enjoy it while it lasts. We're going to be dealing with this for the next few days. Then we're going to turn that storm track back towards Pacific Northwest, most likely. Nice snow-capped mountains showing up here on the GOES-17 satellite imagery. Now, taking a look here, SeaTac 52, right at average high. But if you take a look here, of course, 7 straight days, no precipitation. We're going to go at least a few more days here across the area with no precipitation before we potentially bring the storms back to the Pacific Northwest. Now, I want to show you guys this, 1955. Look at these record lows. 1 week straight, down into the single digits for SeaTac. Probably the greatest Pacific Northwest November Arctic outbreak ever. And we're probably not likely to duplicate that anytime soon. We're going to take a look at that here as well. Look at this. This is November 13th with this polar lobe location. Just perfect here for the Pacific Northwest. Really blasted us. And as we put that into motion, it's kind of sat around for a while. Left enough cold air around too, is when we brought a Pacific system in here on the 17th. Pretty widespread snowstorm did occur across Pacific Northwest here as we warmed up. Over 5 inches at SeaTac, for example. Pretty widespread snow. So it was a good Arctic blast there for mid-November. Probably the greatest of all time. Now, taking a look here, this is from Missoula, Montana. Cold temperatures on the way, up to 3 inches can be expected. Gusty winds are coming. Wind chills below zero, single digits, blowing snow, all kinds of stuff with this Arctic air moving down across Montana. They're already highlighting that pattern change for Idaho Panhandle and Montana as well. It should be affecting the entire Pacific Northwest. They're talking about freezing rain in the valley. Sometimes the cold air gets trapped in these lower elevations, and you bring this warm Pacific moisture over the top of it, can result in freezing rain and, of course, heavy mountain snow. A lot of people traveling there on Thanksgiving week, so that's why Missoula putting out this graphic in advance. Checking this out, snowfall forecast across Montana here. You can see a couple inches of blowing snow can reduce visibility pretty quickly. So heads up if you're traveling off through Montana here over the next several days, or especially Thursday, Wednesday night and Thursday. Don't forget your pets. Pendleton put out this graphic here too. Arctic air is starting to move down this time of year, so watch out if you leave your pets outside. Just had to share that one there. Now, taking a look here, you can see we've got some dense fog advisories, winter weather advisories across portions of Montana as well. Pretty quiet, really, otherwise, for the most part across Pacific Northwest. But that's probably going to change here as we go through next week. Check out Southern California. Some high wind warnings are across the higher terrain, some of the gap areas down here, the Santa Ana winds. This is an offshore wind that compresses as it comes off the higher terrain of the Intermountain West here. Compresses and dries out, and it really comes across Southern California as a pretty warm wind generally, and they have some high wind warnings in effect for that, and across the areas, the desert California areas, and up towards Vegas as well. So heads up if you're traveling. Here's a graphic from San Diego on those Santa Ana winds as well. Again, mainly the gap areas to Southern California also. So heads up for that if you're going down towards Southern California. Back to the Pacific Northwest here, you can see we have some offshore winds going on today. We are going to relax as we go on into tomorrow, but then you see the Arctic front start to kick down. Fraser River Valley winds get going. Stampede Gap, the Gorge, you can see the offshore winds going to keep us precipitation free for a while. So that Arctic front's really the only thing that's going to be bringing precipitation anywhere near the Pacific Northwest over the next couple of days or so before, as you can see towards the end of the NAM here, you can see Pacific system returning out here across the ocean here. The timing of the next storm getting in here is still up in question, though. We'll take a look at that here in a moment. I wanted to show you this air mass moving down across the region. There goes the Arctic front there again, mainly impacting areas east. As it sags down, look at this dry air that moves out of the Pacific Northwest, and you can just kind of picture the shield just keeping the precipitation and the storms away from the Pacific Northwest on in through at least this weekend and probably all the way in through early next week. Now, taking a look here, this is 850 millibar temperatures, 5,000 feet, pretty cold air over much of the central portion of the United States here. Now watch as the next cold air shot comes roaring down through Montana. This is Thursday morning shown here. From Wednesday to Thursday morning, some places in Montana are going to go through a 40-degree difference here. So big shock to the system as this moves through the area here, bringing that Arctic front with it. And you can see some of that cold air move out into BC, eastern Washington, Oregon, and Idaho a bit as this moves into the central portions of the country here on and through Friday morning. Now taking a bit look at this big ridge here across the west coast of North America. Check out the Arctic high that gets spawned and brought down the east slopes of the Rockies here. And again, that's going to cast that good pressure gradient, keep us from getting too stagnant here across Pacific Northwest. Thankful for that. Now here we go on to the extended a little bit more. You see the ridge kind of break down. Gulf of Alaska troughing gets going here. We're now into Monday, and the European kind of wants to bring in the system pretty quick here. The GFS is later with the system by almost at least a day or two. We'll take a look at that here in some of the extended runs here. But you can see the Gulf of Alaska trough gets going here on the European here and then continues to bring storm systems towards Pacific Northwest as we go through mid and later next week. Now take a look at SeaTac. You can see these nice sunny days for the most part. If you're out of those low clouds, chilly overnight lows, frosty mornings, and then you'll see that Pacific storm train start to come back towards Pacific Northwest. Much warmer, also wetter here though too. You can see these overnight lows not down towards freezing here as we get in towards mid next week. Now looking at this, the European yesterday afternoon's run, you can see the dramatic return to precipitation here. All 50 ensemble members are showing some type of precipitation. The controls showing a couple periods over an inch here for SeaTac, and look at just completely dry. No chance of precip up until this point, and this is about Sunday night going into Monday. However, I wouldn't be surprised to see this push back a little bit here. The GFS is not in agreement with the European here. As shown, you can see some of these models are dry and not as much on the mean or the control here. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this push back, or maybe some of the systems come in a little bit weaker initially, but the overall pattern says we're going to change back to a wetter and warmer period coming up. Now this is looking at the 12Z European. Let's update this. We have the most recent information here. This is hot off the presses. You can see that Arctic front slide down mainly east of the Rockies again. Clips BC, brings a little bit of snowfall there. Doesn't really get too much into Washington, just kind of clips the northern mountains there. But you can see we're not going to get any major precipitation until at least, this is going through the weekend. Here it starts to return to western BC on Monday morning, and then the European starts to introduce this by Tuesday. And look at some of this precip coming here. Looks like kind of an atmospheric river signature here as we go through mid and later next week, with more systems on the horizon out here on the European. So we'll continue to watch that. We have a few days to still try to check out the details of what's coming during this pattern change next week. Now, taking a look at this. This is 2-meter temperature. This is right at the surface here. Check out the northern hemisphere, Alaska, BC, Washington, Pacific Ocean. There's Hawaii here. Here's the Aleutians. There's Japan way over here. Here's Siberia and Russia here. Here's Africa, and there's Europe. So we put this into motion here. Look at Siberia. I just had to point this out. This cold air mass is just, they're just hogging all the cold air across the northern hemisphere here. We're doing pretty good across the North Pole here as well. But you can see the diurnal cycle across Africa, for example, the daily heating, the nocturnal cooling. And really, this air mass is so dominant over Russia here that the sun's rays almost have no effect on it anymore. As the sun starts to retreat, the rays are not as direct, and so we don't warm up as much across the northern hemisphere, and it really shows in this cycle. Just let it run through a couple times here, and you can guys see this cold air just kind of hang out and it's kind of leaving us alone here. We got pretty big ridge here across the west coast of North America, at least till next week, but then we should start to turn on the storms here for the Pacific Northwest. But I just had to show this across Russia and Siberia. I guess that's why they invented vodka, right? I mean, just bone-chilling temperatures out there. Now, taking a look here, the experimental product still showing that heavy precipitation potential for the Pacific Northwest, the return to mountain snows as we go through the end of November. Hopefully those atmospheric rivers aren't too nasty and don't eat away at our snowpack too much as we go. And I shouldn't even say atmospheric river yet, just kind of a signature the European is showing. Doesn't mean that's coming yet. Not a significant one anyway. So anyway, 6 to 10 day temperature outlook here. You can see the return to some above normal temperatures probably occurring here with a signal for precipitation returning. 8 to 14 day is similar, but even more of a signal there for above average, and 8 to 14 day precipitation outlook as well. Now here's looking at La Nina. Right now we are in a current moderate La Nina stage. Now, this is looking out towards November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July. You can see as we hit February here, we're still likely to be in La Nina, but by the time we get to March, we're probably going to be starting to warm up that Pacific Ocean out there, and you can see we're probably going to be in neutral territory here as we go into the spring. I don't know if that means we'll have a warmer spring, but it's probably a pretty good bet. And you can see El Nino start to bring its chances back pretty good here. So we may be headed back towards an El Nino here in the next year or two. We'll see how that goes. I'm going to do a video that talks about La Nina, neutral, and El Nino conditions here for the Pacific Northwest and what that generally means and what we can expect. I'll probably do it as soon as I'm done with the wind series. I want to do it before, we get too far into December, because I want to do it during the winter months so you guys have an idea of what we can expect and just kind of raise general awareness on what La Nina and El Nino mean for the Pacific Northwest. So I'll be doing a video on that coming up here. So anyway, yeah, enjoy these nice days while you got them, especially if you're not dealing with those low clouds. It's very nice out there. The sun feels pretty warm. But yeah, we're going to have that big Arctic air mass move down east of the Rockies. We'll change our weather up here a little bit. Hopefully give us enough ventilation where you don't stagnate too much across the region here before the storm train looks to return here as we go through later into November. So anyway, yeah, we'll do this again tomorrow. We'll continue to check out that extended forecast. Thanks to all my new subscribers, all my new members. This channel is not possible without you guys. So we'll continue to do this again, and we'll check things out tomorrow, and I'll talk to you guys then.